Okay, I think we have everything running the way it's supposed to. Let's check to make sure. Well, maybe. Anyways, someone asked a question about how to get it used to and start using a tablet. So, allow me to share what wisdom I have with you. The biggest thing that's going to start off is what type of software you're using. If you're using GIMP, there's a couple different areas. You'd have to, leave me a message with what specifically you're trying to do. The last version of GIMP I used on the Mac, which was, about a year ago, had some very serious bugs, and I'm not sure if they fixed them, so I haven't used GIMP in a while. Not that it's a bad program, just that it had issues on the Mac. Hopefully they fixed that. And I'm more of a Photoshop person, but I understand not everyone wants to shell out for Photoshop. So both work. Using a tablet's the same on both. I'm assuming that you've got one that's got an adequate workspace. Trying to use a tablet where your draw size is less than 4 by 6, you're going to have a sad time. They work great for people who have a joint issue or a hand issue and they don't want to use a mouse. That's fine, but for doing drawing, this is one of those cases where bigger is better because it's easier to do what you want. To get used to using a tablet, the biggest thing that you have to do is practice. We're used to when you're drawing, you're always, you know, looking down at your hand. That's a very crude eyeball there, I promise. You're always looking at what you're doing on the paper, but when you're using a tablet, suddenly you are looking up here. Wow, that's a really horrible little profile, but we get the idea. Look, there's an ear. Now it's a person. You're now having to look up while your hand is down here doing its thing on the tablet below, and you are looking at a screen. Now there's a couple things that can mess you up, and you have to sit and fiddle with the settings and figure which works for you. Sometimes the proportions of the screen do not match the proportions of the tablet. For example, let's say your tablet is more, let me make a shape to illustrate my point here. There's the shape tool. No, that's a circle. Hit the wrong button. There we go. Your tablet, let's say, is more square, but your screen is a bit more widescreen. Now, obviously, this is extreme, but what has to happen here, and let's change this to color so we can see what we're doing. Green. Green's the color for today. And Photoshop being helpful made a layer. Thank you, Photoshop. Thank you for being helpful. But what's going to happen is your tablet has to match the corners to your screen. So normally you would draw a circle, but because this is wider on the screen, you end up drawing something that's more like an oval. So you have to figure out how is it going to ask you to work and how is that going to bug you. For a while, I had a laptop that had a very long, narrow screen, and I used a tablet since 1998. I loved that thing. It finally died after 11 years of my horrible use to it. I found that when I had to draw this method in order to make my very squared tablet fit a more rectangular screen, I ended up drawing everything was really narrow. It looked like a Greco painting. Eventually, I got a slightly different screen that was better. It was more square, so then I was going back to drawing round again. And that just takes time. I've discovered that it takes anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks to get used to it. And if you take a break for a while, like let's say I was studying really hard for something, I didn't use Photoshop for a few months, and when I came back, I had to relearn how to ride a bicycle, if that makes sense. I do use a tablet when I'm at work a lot. My tablet at work is small and it makes me kind of sad sometimes, but it is what it is. I'm not going to complain. I didn't have to pay for it. My old one was a bit bigger. Eventually, I'll invest in a big one again. Right now, I actually cheat and I use a Cintiq, and that is a screen that you draw right on. If you're really serious about it, I would recommend saving your pennies, and they do cost a lot of pennies to get these. Do your research, figure out which one works for you. You're not going to find too many used in my experience because people tend to hold on to these till they die. I've had mine for a number of years and she still works, so we're just going to keep that up. But that is neither here nor there. But getting used to using a tablet, there's a couple things that you should know. Your tablet should be touch sensitive. If you're not sure how to make that work with the Photoshop, if you're having trouble with that, make sure your drivers are up to date. I've seen many a goofed up driver mess someone up. In the Photoshop brushes, if you see the ones where it's tapered on the end, that means they're pressure sensitive. This one is pressure sensitive, but only on opacity. This one is size and pressure sensitive. This one here, it's not quite size and pressure sensitive, but you can make it, or size and opacity sensitive, but you can make it work. So if I press really light, my line is thin. If I press harder, without even picking it up, and you can go back and forth between thin and thick and thin and thick, all of that is built into the tablet, which is why they're so nice. You cannot do that with a mouse. It just doesn't work. Got to use a tablet. Adjusting the size of your brush will let you make a lot of neat little changes very quickly. So if you were doing something like learning how to crosshatch, which is just making lines to imply shading on a shape, making sure your brush is, the size will change based on how hard you push. This is really good practice. Cross-hatching is awesome. A bit weird to start off with, but it's there. If you're not sure if your brush is or is not, if you press this button up here, or over there, there's two spots for it. This is your brush presets, and you can actually go in and change this. So if I go into shape dynamics, I can see the size jitter. That's how small to how big it gets, and I can fiddle and adjust this. Right now it's at 0, but my control for the size is pen pressure. I can tell it that it can only go so small. If I take that all the way, then it's always the same size no matter what I do. If I get rid of that, there it is. There's a couple other things you can play with all that stuff in there. So if I take that off, we want that on. There's also, let's see, where is color dynamics? You can actually have it jitter between two colors. So if I tell this to be pen pressure, and I tell this, let's make that bright green, and just to get the dynamics in there, that's red. So now I have it switching back and forth between the colors. Ooh, maybe not. There we go. I can now make it jitter. There was the button we were looking for. I had that percentage up and I shouldn't have. The harder I press, the more it goes into green. The softer I press, the more it goes into red. Pretty hard to get the full red in there. So that's one cool trick. That all has to do with the how hard you push. And you'll notice the size is still there, so that's all in there. Other things in here that have to do with jitter, you can get some really trippy effects. It looks like one of those little kid programs. But there you go. So I'm going to take off hue jitter. Don't need that. Let's see. Dual brush. You can combine it with something else if you want to. Where is... No, I don't want wet edges. No, we want smoothing on. There is a way to control, and I'm just spacing on where it's at. They move it occasionally, and I learned this, how to mess with this stuff back on, I kid you not, Photoshop 4. Not CS4, 4. We had one undo. It was amazing. But yeah, so that's a good way to start getting used to the pen pressure. Now, to get used to that hand-eye coordination, everybody's favorite activity, my best suggestion for you is to start drawing simple things. Practice drawing shapes, practice drawing circles, practice drawing straight lines. Pick a spot and have all your lines go there. Wow, that jitter is going to drive me bonkers. I need to get rid of that. Color dynamics off. There we go. Back to black. So you can start, just trying to make, well, there's this button up here that I believe, there's the opacity jitter. It's this little button right there now. So if I don't push as hard, it becomes more see-through. That button is pressure, so they moved those. That's right. Someone even told me that. I learned, and I completely forgot it. I'm going to take off the opacity one, though. Practice drawing something simple, something you're familiar with to start. You can draw something as simple as an eyeball. You can draw something as complex as hands. I think one of the first things I was drawing was naturally, dragons, because I have deep-seated issues. But the main thing is you have to practice. You just have to put in the time with the tablet, with the stylus, and just getting your hands and your eyes used to that. There's no magical secret. There's no magical concoction that you drink or prayer to Bob Ross, as much as I wish that would work. That just makes tablets easier. The only thing that makes them easier to use is just practice. That is the secret. Again, practice, practice, practice. My favorite thing to practice with when I was trying to get used to new techniques, besides drawing dragons, of course, is drawing and then just practice shading shapes, circles, cones, cylinders, regardless of what art style you prefer. The basics are the basics for a reason, and a really good foundation in basics will get you just about anything. So if you're having trouble using a tablet, that is the magical secret, is just practicing. I do work in education. My kiddos, when I'm working with them, same thing I tell them all the time. And it does take, from my observation watching many people using this software, it does take about 3 to 4 hours of solid just sitting there and working at it to get over that awkward, I'm trying to draw a circle, but it looks like an egg that's been cracked in a pan. I know. We've all do it. We all still do it. When I'm switching back and forth between a Cintiq and a sketchbook, and then I go into I use a tablet, it's a little painful. It's a little embarrassing. You feel like, a goose trying to land on a frozen lake. Everyone gets that way. Do not feel bad. Do not feel awkward. Again, we all do it. Even the pros, they just, know that they just need to get used to it again. That's the only magical secret. So, okay, I hope that answers all the questions about how to get started and how to get better with a tablet. Again, there isn't any really big secret to it. It's just practice. Just doodle, 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 draw, 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 sketch, 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 practice, practice, practice. That's the sorcery right there, Harry Potter. That's all we got to do. So, all right, I hope that answers concerns and all that. And leave me questions or hints that you want. I'll be going over maybe how to build paintbrushes in Photoshop sometime. That's pretty fun. Good way to build a brush that makes techniques or makes textures that you want. So maybe we'll do that another time. Have a great time. Leave me a note about what you want. If you missed this stream, I'm going to have this video and other ones on YouTube of where to do that. And we're under Doodles and Dragons Inc. on YouTube as well. And we've also got a Facebook group, which is Doodles and Dragons Inc. So leave a note there if you have any questions or anything that you would like to see tackled in the future. Have a great night.